everybody, it's God's Comic Brad Stine, and this is, in fact, Brad Stine Has Issues, where comedy, conservatism, and Christianity collide in a cacophony of clarity. This is a special Monday night because every single one of you people have been bullied, and you don't know what to do about it. Well, I do. We're going to talk to Paul Coughlin today, a specialist on bullying and how to be aware of it and how to try to fix it and how to help your kids and how to help you. That's right, adults can be bullied too. But more importantly, Wyatt has been bullied on a regular basis because Wyatt, he's such a delicate flower. Why do you consider yourself more of a delicate flower or more of a delicate petal? Maybe you've gone even below flower in just the petal itself.
I am a dainty dandelion.
Ah, that's sweet.
Swaying in the breeze.
Well, you are swaying in the breeze. And why this is the key, I think, is that so many of us don't want to admit when we have problems growing up. I mean, when you were growing up in school, and I'm curious about this because I was there, but I didn't follow you at each class. I don't remember going from first grade and learning to read and learning about bees and learning how see Dog Run. I don't know if that's how you learned to read. Did you have books like that? See Dog Run or Run Spot Run?
I think we did at the Scholastic Book Fair, I think they called it.
Okay.
In elementary school.
Right. And that's where everybody learns to read. Matter of fact, if you're learning to read in high school, it might be because you're in remedial lessons.
Yeah. The funny thing about that whole Scholastic Book Fair thing is that I spent most of my time there looking at the video games they sold.
What kind of videos would they sell at Scholastic's Fair where they're trying to teach children to be educated, and thus what better way to do that than to waste your time watching video games?
Surprisingly, nothing educational. It was like actual video games. Like games you'd get on a CD and put in your computer.
Give me an example.
So the one that I remember actually...
I thought I was in West Side Story there for a second. Go ahead.
The one that I remember and actually played was a SpongeBob game. It was SpongeBob Nighty Nightmare.
Okay.
About him having a nightmare.
Okay.
I made it past level 1 and then couldn't get past level 2.
To this day, you've been trapped.
To this day,
you can't overcome it.
I can't. It's too powerful.
Really? Have you ever met a game you couldn't dominate?
Actually, yeah. It's weird. There's a popular RPG series called Final Fantasy.
Final Fantasy.
Which ironically is on its 16th title.
So the fantasy never finalized. It continued on and on.
Well, the actual story was the first game. The first Final Fantasy was literally the studio's last-ditch effort to make a game. That's why it was the Final Fantasy. And then it did so well, they made 15 more.
So you're saying that this company was eating it in its game-making capabilities, and it came up with one called Final Fantasy, just sort of as a final last-ditch effort to make them a profitable company. And they called it Final Fantasy, like, it was this sort of game where everything comes to a head. There's nothing else to imagine. It's apocalyptic. It's obviously is.
I mean, about as apocalyptic as PS1 graphics could get, yeah.
Okay, but nevertheless, it was doomsday, zombie-ish.
Well, no, it's Final Fantasy. It's a fantasy game, like Lord of the Rings.
Okay, but it's the last one.
It was supposed to be. And then it did so well that they're like, oh, shoot, we can't change the name now. Now we have to keep making the final game.
So did they call it Final Fantasy and then Finaler Fantasy and then finally
They weren't that creative.
No.
They just said 2, 3, 4, 12, 19.
Well, here's what's interesting about Final Fantasy, the game, which, by the way, I've never heard until this moment. And why should I?
No, it's a major franchise now. And as I was saying, they've released 2 of the games on iPhone. And I played them.
And?
I enjoyed them a lot.
But?
I played them a lot. I made it all the way to the final boss in both games.
Okay.
And then immediately lost interest.
Why?
I don't know. It's like I was so invested up until then. But the second I'm like, I can win now, I just said to myself, but do I wanna? Nah.
It would have been like anticlimactic to beat the final boss.
To put into perspective how invested I was in it, one of the mid-game bosses was really hard for me. So hard that I had to, in the RPG series, this is called grinding. I had to level up one of my characters a bunch of times so they'd learn a specific ability so that I could beat the boss. And that took me days to do it.
Do you level them up by having to accomplish things?
Literally, you walk across the map until an enemy looks at you the wrong way, and then they attack you.
Okay.
And then you attack them back, and hopefully you win.
And if you win, you acquire
experience points.
Okay.
Which level up your character. All
right. So this is...
So I spent days in this game.
Yeah.
And the second I actually saw the fruits of my labor, those grapes are power to sour anyway. I'll move on. That's basically what happened.
But, I mean, I've known you to play lots of games, the most famous, popular games out there, and you've beaten them all. Every game you've actually gotten very, very good as a game player. And you've beaten everybody, and you did something that I would guess, and I could be wrong, I don't know enough about your world, maybe this is very common, but you did a run on a Mario game where you literally couldn't get killed once. And if you did, no matter where you were on that level, and it might have taken to get to the end 30 minutes, I don't know. But whatever it was, each thing you had to accomplish to get to the end, to beat it. But if you got lost at one point, there's no checkpoints, you start brand new over. What was the name of that?
The Perfect Run from Super Mario Galaxy 2.
And you did it.
I did it.
How long did it take you to beat that?
Months, maybe? At least weeks. At least weeks.
And how many times would you say a day you tried to run?
A couple hours a day.
And would you just get... See, here's what people don't know about me. Why should I expose myself? And when I say expose myself, clearly what I mean is my history of my behavior. Obviously,
I mean, why not?
I realized that it sounded, a little
off-putting. Look on the bright side. Salem wouldn't get to see anything.
That's true.
It's only the live audience.
Oh, that would be in deep despair and be sort of
as we all
jumping off cliffs throughout the nation.
As we all know, YouTube has always been super forgiving when it comes to anything on their platform. They don't delete our videos or anything when we accidentally put too much of a clip into our stuff. No, they're cool like that.
No, they love it. Matter of fact, they can't wait to get as many people watching my videos as possible. They just are an amazing...
I can almost hear those lawyers twiddling their thumbs in clearly anticipation for the next episode.
Well, nevertheless, I'm going to expose a part of me that I've changed. I've changed. And I don't know if you know this, but when we first, and when I say we, I'm talking about you and me. So when video games first started, I think, getting pretty popular. I mean, you got to understand something, son. White, I'm a boomer. You know what that means, right?
You like explosions.
Explosions, things that blow up, shrapnel.
I was thinking more population explosions, but that works too.
Yeah, and collateral damage. Anything that has to do with me surviving but nobody else.
But basically, yeah.
Yeah, but here's the deal. I am of that era and that age, so you have to understand something. I told you your great uncle, who you never met, and you don't know, his name was Chan. That was his first name. His last name was Stine. Have you ever heard of Stine as a last name?
Yeah,
a surname?
I've heard Stein all the time. Yeah.
Or I'm sorry, did I spell it wrong? Stien. Oh, you mean Stine?
Listen. The whole I before E thing has always confused me.
How many times, just by the way, since we're kind of off in the weeds?
Too many. The answer is already, I know the answer. It's too many.
Have you sat there and said, Stein? No, Stine. I-E-N? No, I-N-E. I-E-N-E. How many times, as you're spelling it, S-T-I-N-E, are they adding that E in the middle? How many times, Wyatt?
Like
As in
maybe 50%
every
of the time.
time.
50% of the time, whenever I'm like Stine, I'll get like the thing and it's EIN. And I'm just like, oh gosh.
Once in a blue moon, and it's happened maybe 2 or 3 times in my lifetime. Somebody, I'll say Stine, they go Stine, and I literally kiss them on the mouth. It's like you have, oh my,
Is that what you're gonna expose on the internet?
That's not
You
what I'm
just
gonna. No.
randomly
No,
kiss strangers on the
Lord, no.
mouth when they pronounce
But if they guess Stine,
I would have thought you'd give them a comically sized check or something. But okay,
right, but I'm
to each
grateful.
their own.
I'm grateful that they got it. But Wyatt, I almost feel like they have a learning disability because it's like they spelled it.
Spelled my name right? Do you need to go back to preschool?
But think about it. It's spelled as it sounds. I mean, Stine should be Stine. That's how we spell it. And yet they always do it EIN or IEN. And so I have to think of them who spells it phonetically, Stine, that they're not really educated because everybody else assumes it's EIN because in every other thing, Bergstein, Lowenstein, whatever, it's EIN. So anyways, that is, how did we get off on our last name, Miss Spinelli?
Who are you talking about? Me? You're the one who had the rant.
You're right. Dang it. Well, I was hoping you'd stop me somewhere, put the brakes on, throw something.
I was, but somebody has to drive the entertainment.
Let's get an old vaudeville hook. You can just pull me off.
So what exactly was how realistic was that?
What?
Because like in cartoons, you see the vaudeville hook swing someone away whenever they do.
Right.
Did that actually happen?
I think so.
Was that okay? So somebody's job backstage was to use a comically sized hook to reel in anyone who was bombing on stage.
Apparently.
That was a job.
And you know what, Wayne? I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. I've never stopped to consider or research if that was a legitimate process they went.
Well, lucky for you, I've got a phone, and I don't have to worry about if any camera sees me on it.
Well, you know what? Every professional...
Give me 5 minutes.
Please. Thank you for taking the initiative. Because all the professional podcasts, they'll suddenly have their engineer pull up and we'll watch the video happen, and that's pretty interesting. We don't have that. Maybe we can get there someday. Why? Do you think, what would it take for us to get like a thing up here and then you go find something and then you play it? Is that even possible that we could join the groups of the actual professional podcasts and the updated, or are we going to be eternally part of the chisel and rock and a guy in a leopard skinned loincloth building our template of communication? I just thought
Okay. Yeah. So according to my research,
please,
it did happen.
Okay.
It started in the 1890s.
Okay.
A stage prop shepherd's hook was used to pull bad performers bodily from the stage after audience members shouted, "Give him the hook." That was the key sign to know this guy gotta go.
This guy's gotta go. So they gave him.
And okay, look, even if we don't have the hook anymore, we gotta bring that saying back, man.
Give him the hook.
I want somebody on the next Dave Chappelle show to just shout, "Give him the hook!"
Wyatt,
just to see what happens.
Have you ever bombed on stage?
In what fashion?
Well, I mean, you're not a comic, so you've never bombed as a comic. You're not an actor, so it wasn't like you were in a play and everybody booed and hissed. But you are a musician. You played in many bands and had many concert opportunities as a drummer. So I don't know, did you ever do a show that everybody booed or next?
No, I have never had anyone boo me in a performance. However, I'm not going to sly here and say that every show I've done was as good as it could have been.
Of course.
There were some notable examples. There was one, I was getting ready for a performance for a song that featured double bass almost as much as every other instrument.
Okay.
So obviously a double bass drum pedal is the only way that song works.
Unless you can double bass with one foot.
No.
That's a technique.
I know it is. Double, heel toe technique.
Okay.
But no, even that wouldn't be enough. That's how intense it was.
Okay. So this is like who were the famous double bass guy? Well, wasn't it the guy from the Who, Keith? No,
Keith Moon.
Moon. Yeah,
Keith
wasn't
Moon.
he a double bass guy?
I don't think he is.
Or how about John Bonham? Was he a
Maybe. Double bass. I don't think anyone has ever gotten famous for using the double bass drum. Double bass drum pedal is the handicap of drummers. You only use it if you're not good enough to do it without it.
Can you do heel toe?
No, of course not. I use double pedal.
You do?
Yeah, of course I do.
What does that mean, double header?
Double pedal.
Oh.
As in a pedal, but two.
So you're still doing double bass, but you're using the same bass
to do it with. Yeah, instead of one.
Okay.
So anyway, I go to a sound check, which I go to the kit, and they have a double bass drum pedal on there. So hooray, I don't need to bring my own. That's great. They're annoying to set up. So I go through the sound rehearsal. It sounds good. Night of performance happens. I strut up on that stage. I sit down at my chair. I look down, and there's only one bass pedal. So needless to say...
Say it anyways.
That wasn't the best performance of that song.
So you're talking about a song that literally needed double bass.
Literally 90% of the song was double bass drum pedal.
And you did what?
Single bass drum pedal.
Did you try to heel toe it?
No, I didn't even. I accepted my defeat.
Okay. So what's the song?
I don't know. It was some heavy metal screamo song that the singer wanted, and
You don't even remember.
why would I remember?
Did they know that they were about to not get a double bass?
No, nobody did.
So I'm sure it was rehearsed with the double bass.
Yeah, literally every rehearsal was with the double bass.
Okay.
I practiced with the double bass.
Yeah. And
There ain't no double bass when I go in to play it.
it was too late because
No, of course it was too late. I didn't bring my own. I was told I'd have one.
Okay.
And then I go to the sound guy afterwards, and I'm just like, bro, where's my double bass drum pedal?
Right.
And his response was, isn't it on the kit? So yeah, not my best performance.
So you could put a double bass pedal and only use one, so you could always have left it up there the whole time.
Well, I could have, except I wasn't the only one using that kit.
What I'm getting at is the people that are doing just a single bass foot could have used a double
they
bass.
could have.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who took it out because they weren't supposed to, but they did. So yeah, that was one of my performances that didn't go too well.
Okay.
Another one was when I threw my sticks halfway across the stage, and about 2 minutes after telling my mom, "Don't worry, there's no possible way I'll throw my sticks in this performance."
And is that a very common occurrence for drummers, is to throw their sticks?
Only if you're good. And I know that sounds counterproductive, but it's actually true.
Explain.
Good drummers drop their sticks more often than bad ones.
Explain.
Simple. When you're holding a drumstick, you might be tempted to put a death grip on it to prevent aforementioned stick throwing.
I get you.
The problem with that is that if you're tightening those muscles, you really don't have a good movement. You can only really move your wrist and your arm, and you're not supposed to move your arm, really.
So you can't do triplet.
No, of course not. So what you do is you hold it lightly enough that you get all that range of motion in your fingers.
Yeah.
And you can just slip the stick out of your hand with zero effort.
Okay.
That's how you get the precise control over it.
Yeah.
But of course, if you're barely holding on to the stick, that means there's barely anything keeping it from chucking itself across the stage like a wooden missile.
You know, it's funny because I never thought about that. I don't know if most people have thought about the fact that a drummer, you figure he gets up there, he's got it. It's like a guy with a guitar. You don't sit there and think, I bet he needs a 3 or 4 in case one of them, if his guitar falls off or it breaks. You don't think like that. He's got his guitar. So you never think that you need, but do they all have bunches of sticks sitting there in case they drop?
We have an entire stick bag of like literally dozens of sticks.
Okay.
Pails of sticks. So like 40 to 50 sticks is what we bring.
Wow. Even Neil Peart.
Even you? Are you kidding me, dude? That dude didn't just play drums. He played like xylophone. He played chimes. He played gong. He played all of that stuff.
Glockenspiel?
He was an entire orchestra, man.
Right.
Have you seen his live performance?
His kit was ridiculous.
Have you seen his live performance of Xanadu in the 1970s?
Uh-uh.
Dude literally had an entire orchestra behind him, and he played the whole thing. Every like percussion orchestra instrument, he played it.
So why would a drummer who you're thinking of, and it's hard to be a great drummer, so I'm not taking away the skills set of a drummer. Okay, let's start there. But they have these big fat toms and snares and whatnot and cymbals, so they're not like it's not like a little thing that you're hitting. So it's fairly there for you. I'm not saying you can't miss. I'm not saying it's not hard. Okay, but big giant drum heads everywhere you look, and giant cymbals. They're not tiny. So why would someone who becomes great at drumming and proficient at drumming, why would that translate into xylophone, where you're like playing a piano? You got to hit each note properly. I realize it's percussion, but it's kind of like it's a different thing, because if you don't hit your drum directly in the middle as you're playing your snare, it still sounds okay. But if you hit the wrong note on xylophone, you messed up. And you can tell because it's a melodic instrument. So why would that? You have to kind of learn a whole new instrument and a whole new technique. Yay or nay?
Oh, yeah, that's why people always like joke about drummers not doing anything, because most drummers don't worry about those melodic aspects that literally every other major instrument in a band does.
You're right.
That's that's one of the reasons why Neil was so good, because he also understood that stuff.
Mm. And you know that he, well into his career, when he was world famous and considered one of the top 10 drummers maybe of all time in rock, I'm guessing.
Easily, yeah.
Okay. That he started taking lessons.
Yeah.
From a jazz.
Yeah, he wanted to learn traditional grip.
Traditional grip.
Yeah. And then he recorded an entire album with traditional grip.
So if you've played matching grip your whole life, which you did, how easy it is to learn traditional grip? Is it like a whole new thing, or are you, if you're pretty dang good at it, can you kind of jump in and go, okay, I can do this?
If you're really good, you can fake it, but you got to practice to actually like properly do it. Some
consider Buddy Rich the greatest drummer there ever was.
He was definitely up there.
Did you ever see some of his stuff? It was ridiculous.
Oh, yeah.
But he did traditional grip. I mean, yes, traditional grip.
Mm-hmm.
So does the traditional grip guy throw his sticks too? Do you ever lose that one?
That one, not as often, because you basically have your whole hand sort of cupping it.
Yeah.
But it's not impossible, trust me. Trust me, if you play drums long enough, it will happen.
All right, okay.
That's just the nature of the beast.
And so you've lost sticks in the middle of a thing, and you had nothing to choose.
I've broken sticks. I've done both at the same time. That's a story.
And your favorite memory of playing the drums in a show was where and when and what?
Probably the last time we ever did the jam music camp.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was the year where I finally got a song I wanted to be part of the thing. I've been going there for how many years?
6.5 months?
6.5. No. Like over every single time they did it.
Okay.
Years.
Okay.
Maybe even a decade.
I'll give you that.
Never got a single song that I wanted
to
actually be part of the show.
Okay.
Last year they do it. Last time I'm able to do it, I get one of my songs in. And not only do I get one of my songs in, but the bass player for that band really, really liked showmanship. So we'd spent all week practicing for this performance. We finish with the literal last rehearsal before the show. And after everyone's packed up, he and I sit down and are like, okay, so we've convinced them we're going to be normal. Now, how do we spice it up?
Okay.
So we came up with this idea that he would basically, during one of the pre-verses after the chorus, I would chuck a stick at him. He would catch it in midair, and he would use it to play slap bass. We rehearsed it exactly 3 times, got it twice, and said, good enough. Day of performance comes later that night, and we absolutely freaking nailed it. Oh, it was so fun because neither of us thought it was gonna work.
What was the song?
It was Worth It All by Disciple.
Nice. Yep. Was it a Christian?
Yeah, we were in the Christian rock band.
Nice, son. And that's one of your favorite Christian bands is Disciple.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And they're hardcore.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
You've met them.
I have. I think our pastor, Darren Tyler, used to manage him, I think.
So if he's the pastor now,
yes.
Does that mean the next guy we're going to get's the future role?
Maybe.
But then the moment he becomes the pastor, he's a pastor now.
I know. So
I'm sure there's a metaphor for time somewhere.
There is no futurer because they immediately become
the presenter.
Yeah.
And then once they're that, they're the pastor.
It's like that old saying, today is yesterday's tomorrow.
Yeah. When I first heard that, I was like mentally, like mathematically, like, what does that mean?
Yeah. It's almost like... Hold on.
The square root of tomorrow is yesterday's not yesterday's tomorrow.
Well...
what? Can you say that again, please? I didn't catch that.
Let me ask you a question, son. So we're sitting here today on a Monday in August, and it's hot, and we've got our air conditioning running. Hopefully it's not interfering with our microphones.
If it is, you'll at least watch this in comfort, knowing that at least we were cool.
We were cool and not sweating. But it's from our split unit that we had to have installed that all of our viewers, or many of them, donated to help make it possible for this to be a studio that was inhabitable in August in Nashville, Tennessee, because it gets really muggy, thick, hot, and difficult. And yet, here we sit in comfort. Here we sit with a wonderful mic, 2 mics now, cameras or 2 that all do a wonderful broadcasting work. And yet, we wonder to ourselves, where else can this show go? What more can Brad Stine Has Issues do? And so I wanted to take a second right now, if you don't mind, son. Do you?
I mean, I guess I don't mind, but make it quick.
Okay. So what I was wondering was, I want my people out there, because remember, the guys that come out every Monday, for the most part, that watch live, because face it, that's quite a commitment to watch live. And many of them tuned in. They wanted to listen to Paul Coughlin, who's going to speak about bullying and how he's learned to teach schools to help kids stop bullying and actually apologize. It's a pretty cool, you're going to enjoy this interview because it is a difficult thing. And many people have been bullied in their lifetime. Many people have been a bully. Many people have experienced it or seen others or had kids. So it's a rough one. It's a tough thing. I don't know if you ever were bullied, Wyatt. I don't know if that's true.
Honestly, I don't remember.
If you don't remember, you were.
And here's the thing. My memory of like everything up until high school is so weird.
Yeah. It's a blank.
Literally, my earliest memory of like middle school, like actually going to school, I like zoned out in math class. I came to thinking it was the first week of the school year, only to like 2 seconds later confirm that it was in fact about halfway through the semester with a substitute teacher, and I was sitting somewhere I was positive I didn't sit down in. I just simply zoned out through the first half of the semester, and I didn't even realize it.
That doesn't make sense.
I know it doesn't make sense, but I swear to you, that happened.
You kind of didn't know where you were every time you went into that class?
No, it was exactly one time.
Oh.
And then never again.
Oh, so you kind of lost time and space as though you had been formed into the earlier part of the semester or something?
No, it was like, I had like given myself the false memory that it was the first week of school when it was actually halfway through the semester.
You believed it.
Yeah.
Mm.
I still am not entirely sure what happened.
I remember once in high school, this just reminded me of this moment. I was in a class, I think it was like I don't know, reading or literature. I don't know, whatever it was kind of boring. And I was sitting there and the class is going on, teacher's doing whatever, and I kind of look out the window and it was the beginning of school. It was the beginning of school. So it might have been the first day or first week. So it was still, green out. This is in Indiana, so it wasn't winter yet. It wasn't cold. It wasn't snow. And so it's still nice out, pleasant to look out. But I was sitting in this class going, oh my gosh, this is going to drag. This is boring. This is old. And I'm looking out that window. I said, you know what? One day you're going to be sitting here looking out that, and it's going to be the last day of school. I mean, today's the first day or whatever, but first week. And it seems like forever. It seems like this will never happen. But one day, someday, I'm going to literally be sitting here going, I can't believe it. Remember when you were sitting there going, oh my God, get me through this class? And it's the last day. And here I am, and I'm looking out, and we made it through the fall. We made it through the winter. We made it through the spring. And I'm out, and I did it because right now this is miserable. And I just kind of said, oh, well, and off we went and just tried to endure the rest of the day. And over time, I forgot about that. I think I even ended up where it was only like one semester in that class. And then the second semester, I was in a different class. So I actually didn't end up in that same class on that last day to literally go out and say, there it is. But the reason I bring it up is it felt so daunting, Wyatt. It felt so heavy. I want out. I don't want to be here. This is so boring. This is so miserable. This is so terrible. And I don't know how to get through it. I want out. I don't want to be here. I'm thinking one day it will be the last day, but that might as well be 100 years from now. Wyatt, that was over 40 years ago. But I still remember the angst of that moment going, how do I get through this class? One day, though, I guess one day, it's going to be like 9 months, but I'll look out and I'm free. This is it. I'm out. I made it. I survived. And I still feel that sense of overwhelming, get me out of here, almost like claustrophobia, like get me out of here. And here I sit as an older man with 2 kids and grandchildren and a home, and I live in Tennessee, and I've been a professional comic. That wasn't even in my radar. But it's like I'm getting on to the end of my life, and yet I can still remember that moment as though, am I ever going to get through this semester, this 2 semesters of school? And yet I've lived a life. My life is almost coming to an end, and yet I can remember that moment. And memories are weird like that. It's like you can put yourself in that moment and return like you're the closest thing to a time machine. You literally go back there. And what does it teach us? It teaches us something we all know, we've all said, but we don't take it seriously. Life is short. It happens fast. Now, because I am a Christ follower, because Jesus was the only human being that was historically documented who actually existed. He wasn't a myth. He really existed historically, really changed the world with his words, and then died and came back to life, and people saw it. So he did something that has never been done before or since, thus giving him the title Messiah. I am in fact God. It's true. It's this. Christianity is true. The followers of Christ are following the Messiah that the Jews were prophesied for thousands of years. So I realize that because of that, I am eternal. I'm living forever. I have a spirit inside of my flesh that is eternal, like you have. And yet, I have a tiny, 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 almost infinitesimal number of days in the 3-dimensional realm. I'm in eternity forever. That's what it means, eternity. I'm in this realm, this 5 senses, 3 dimensions, pain, terror, horror, goodness, beauty, peace, this moment, this flesh, just for a little second. And then it will be gone, and that's it. This game has been completed. This is finished. I've reached the final boss in Final Fantasy, except I decided to beat him. And now I get to go home. And that is ultimately what we are all wanting in life. And people don't realize this, I think. All of the things that are happening on this earth right now, this transgender movement. I'm not a woman, I'm a man. I'm not a man, I'm a woman, because I'm not happy here. I want to be this. Those who believe that the fix will be if I abort this baby, then I'm better. This fix is if I just become a TikTok influencer and have 1 million people follow me, then I'm somebody, and I can go to some Mediterranean island and swim through the wonderful sea and eat caviar. And that's what I want. And people have done this: riches and fame and fortune and sports athletics and accomplishments and CEOs and homes and marriages and children and grandchildren and success and overcoming the impossible and being inspired. And it has happened for thousands and thousands of human years. And everything that these people are trying to accomplish with all of this exterior behavioral commitment is trying to simply find one thing: contentment, peace, to be where you belong. And everyone who has ever achieved riches, take the richest man in the world. I've made this observation before, but I look at Bill Gates. I mean, the guy's one of the top, 150, 10, 20 richest men in the world. He literally could buy anything he wants. And apparently quit. You're done. Just go find that island, go find that paradise, buy whatever you want, every ship you want, every cruise thing you want, every kind of deal. Just ride out in the sunset, buddy. You won. You were the richest man there ever was. And they keep working. He even wants to change the world by fixing the sun and dimming it and making sure that we don't have cattle anymore because it's destroying the atmosphere. He literally is trying to control the atmosphere. Be God, basically. That's how bored this man has gotten, that he wants to now control the earth and the climate and have that kind of hubris. He wants to build a tower, basically, to heaven. He is repleting the Tower of Babel. It's this. Point is this. I'm just picking on him. There's many like him. It's not enough. The money's not enough. The food's not enough. The fame's not enough. The family's not enough. We're looking for completion. They're looking for the answer to the oldest question there ever was. Why am I here? And I'm here to tell you it's to know God, your creator, the only thing that makes life meaningful, literally. And then when you find him, tell everybody, guess what? It's real. Follow me. And that's why people watch this program, is to hopefully be inspired, hopefully seek God, hopefully realize that the nihilistic, postmodern, post-truth trauma and rise in emotional and mental disablement and distress and psychosis and suicide and destruction of a body to such a degree that people are even mutilating their own genitals, thinking it will make them better. This monstrous, cancerous pile of a raw sewage that this earth has become because of the philosophy based on atheism that life has no meaning, no purpose. It's not enough. It's a failure. It's destructive. It's a culture of death. And I'm here to tell you that Jesus is a culture of life. And it was so important to him. He died so you don't have to. He resurrected so you could join him. This is the story of Brad Stine Has Issues, because I do have issues, and so do you. And you will until you enter into perfection. And you don't get there until you go through the blood of Christ, who said, I will fix this for you. You can't do it. It's okay, son. Let me handle it. And that's why it is so sobering and important that you understand that he's not ever going to throw you into hell. You're already heading there, and he headed it off at the pass. So when you choose to reject him, it's not like you're just choosing to reject a philosophy or a religious leader. You're rejecting the parachute that was handed you before you jumped out of the plane. It's on you. That's what I'm trying to do with this show. I want there to be laughs. I want it to be entertaining, but I want it to be inspiring, and I want it to be sobering. Life is short, and you and I will be dead soon. And then we just begin to live forever. All of us live forever. But the answer, the question, the problem is where? That's what I'm trying to lead you to. You know, a lot of kids have suffered with bullying, with somebody who makes their life a living hell, miserable. They beat on them. They mentally, emotionally bully them and harm them. It makes them feel good about themselves. It's terrible. Many of us have experienced it or had kids that have, or even as an adult can have that to a certain degree through a boss or a spouse or a friend or a family member. And so I wanted to bring on a guy that I worked with many years ago. I remember, if you watched the show last week, Nate Larkin was on, who was with Samson Society talking about pornography and sexual addictions. But I met him with Godmen. And so Paul Coughlin was another guy that was with the Godmen, or this men's event that I was part of. And he deals with bullying and how difficult it has been to live for so many people because no one is taking it seriously and trying to find a solution. Well, he's had a lot of success with this, and he comes into schools to help teach them how to overcome this dreaded, terrible situation that so many people have endured for thousands of years. Bullying's always been around. But anyways, he has some interesting stories and some interesting, beautiful answers to these stories. So if you have a youngster or somebody, they might want to watch this with you because maybe they're dealing with that or know somebody that is, and they want to help them too. So that's what this is all about tonight on Brad Stine Has Issues. We are going to delve into the nasty world of bullying and see if there's a way out. And the answer is, there is. But you got to figure it out by understanding the dynamics and how to navigate it. So I'm going to help you do that. So welcome to Brad Stine Has Issues, Paul Coughlin. Please welcome to God's Comics' own podcast, Brad Stine Has Issues, Paul Coughlin. My friend, how do you do?
Well, I've been doing pretty good for 91, Brad. Thanks.
Yes,
Appreciate
you're
that.
actually looking good. This isn't really the direction that we were going to take this, and we'll get obviously to your ballywick here in a moment. Let's just be organic. So you are a Christ follower. You're in Oregon. It is a very left-leaning, progressive state, and its politics and its government. And I'm not even casting any kind of denunciation over that. I'm just kind of leaving it there.
Yeah.
But ideas have consequences. How you see the world causes you to behave in a certain way. And if those things that you believe about the world are false, they lead to catastrophe. So let's start with just living in a blue state. Do you find that perhaps living a life of faith and a life of immutable truth, as opposed to relativism, is challenged? Do you find it difficult, or do you find it inspiring? Let's talk about that for a second.
Well, yeah. So, the real sad thing, I think, what I've witnessed as a lifelong Oregonian, that they just don't care. The faith is irrelevant to it. It seems to be more and more the case here, that it just doesn't matter. You may as well be talking about the earth being flat. It doesn't go anywhere. What I have noticed in addition to that is, I don't want to hyper spiritualize it, but Oregonians on average, at least in the larger metropolitan areas, seem to have they seem to care less and less about their neighbor. There's been I'll use the word darkness, but I don't want to overplay the word. If it's darkness with a lowercase d, maybe others would say it's an uppercase D. But there's been a self-centeredness that I've watched over 4 decades, I guess, or 5 decades. And it's been more and more, not less and less. So that's been the thing that I have noticed. And when I talk about it, I don't talk about it a lot, but when I do, other people who've been in Oregon for a while, they don't disagree. They don't disagree. There's a self-centeredness that wasn't there before.
I don't want you to think that I'm sort of suddenly throwing a curveball at you, because we're here to talk about, we're here to talk about the protectors and so forth, and we will, and that'll be the lion's share of what we discuss. But, I care about reality and truth. And Christianity is really presuming that it knows the truth of life, that the Bible is the revelation of reality, that God is actually real, that there is a way that we are supposed to behave. There is sin on this earth. There is those things which are immoral that God has established that will never change, even if the culture does. But there's a cost for breaching what God has said is the way things are going to work. And so because of my comedy, and of course, you've known me over the years, I don't know if you follow much anymore, but I've always sort of attacked the political correct for many, many, many years before a lot of these other guys have, the Bill Burrs and the Dave Chappelles. Before those guys, I was kind of, I came out as a Christian and a conservative with it as a comic, and it destroyed my mainstream career, but it opened up a world that I was called to all along. And that was to tell God's story in the flavor of humor. And so it mattered to me. It really is what drove everything that happened to me as a comic in my career to become more of a Christian activist, so to speak, in that I felt like there were things that had to be said that were crucial and more important than laughter. And so the laughter was the flavor it came in, comedy, but the depth of it was the medicine, right? So the humor was the spoonful of sugar in the medicine. But I find it interesting the way you framed it. You said there seems to be a lack of kindness. Is that how you said it? Or caring about your neighbor? Yeah. And the reason I think that's interesting, Paul, is because the majority of those who are there would call themselves, I guess, progressives or leftists, or maybe they'd use the word liberal, even though they're not even close. They're so far left that they've long abandoned liberal tenets. But this is what I find interesting about that. It's self-deluding. And here's what I mean by that. God is real, which means if you abandon his formula that he's laid out to us, his revelation to us, you don't end up with nothing. You worship something else. He gets replaced with another religion that's false. Progressivism, leftism, is a religion. It's a religion that tries to pretend that it has virtues and morality and goodness and kindness and caring about the other and the marginalized, and are open-minded and tender and merciful and really just fair. And they do all of those words by beating, burning, destroying, disparaging, insulting, discounting those who they disagree with, and call that virtue. Because once they've decided that you're a Nazi, they don't even have to justify it. They've decided, and it's true. There's a cost to what it means. And so I just felt like when you were describing what it's become, that would make sense. If you're beholden only to yourself because you're systemically narcissistic and not to God, then whatever you say is true, and you never have to be held accountable for behaving immorally, because there is no morality except what you deem to be true. Now, I also know there's lots of pockets of Oregon that are very conservative folks and Christian folks. What areas of Oregon would you say maybe would be more old school when you started in Oregon, that was more what you remember Oregon was?
Yeah. So what carries the state obviously is Portland and Eugene, at least by way of national or even state votes, right? But no, so here in Eastern Oregon, it's interesting. We're in Central Oregon. We have pockets of both. And I enjoy that, because you do get exposed to thoughts that may not be your own. And most of the time, it's going to be a fine conversation, right? You're not going to be, you mentioned earlier, being called a Nazi. Oh my gosh, it is so true. And talk about bullying, right? It said, if you disagree with us, we're going to call you some of the worst names imaginable. That is clearly, clearly bullying, because bullying, one of the number one things it does is it takes a person's name away and it replaces it with another name, and a derogatory name. And we see this in genocide, for example. We see it in sexual harassment. We see it in racism and bullying. They're links in an evil chain, because in order to get to those behaviors, you must take the person's dignity away. And we have to justify it to ourselves, right? We're born with a conscience. And so if we're going to attack another person, we have to delude ourselves in thinking that it's justified. And you're talking about the progressive left. And I know there's some people on the right who are name callers as well, but the progressive left has turned it into an art form, with many of their supporters at least in legacy media, they don't even question it anymore. So it's unfair. But no, we have like Eastern Oregon, even parts of Southern Oregon, a little more conservative, moderate. Eugene and Portland, they just carry the state. There's just no way around it.
Of course, you kind of framed it around bullying, and that's really why I have you on today, because that is what became basically the crux of your life's ministry and purpose, was to assist. I'm guessing maybe it started with kids in school, because that has always been such a easy way to isolate somebody and bully them away from their parents and family and protectors, and they're kind of on their own and nowhere to go. And oftentimes schools weren't equipped to even know how to deal with it, or how to even be aware of it, or even care, because it's not that easy. I mean, listen, for somebody to be mean and single somebody out and decide to just be abusive to them, there's not some easy fix to that, because this is human nature. This is not something that somebody just thought of 20 years ago, and we have to it's not like it's an anorexia or some, flavor of the month dysfunction. This is as old as human nature, finding the weaker and taking power over them in some fashion or form. I guess feel better about yourself, or just to, I don't even know if there is a motivation. Matter of fact, why don't we do that? Why don't we allow you, as the expert, to kind of give us a little backstory as to how this even became your main focus, and maybe then we can begin to explore what exactly is bullying, and how we can begin to see if there's ways to overcome it.
Well, you were there at the beginning, right? So, you spoke for Promise Keepers. I did a little of that as well. Then we did Godman. And then I'm sure you spoke with Iron Sharpens Iron and all that. One thing I noticed when talking to men is that when I talked about standing up for the underdog, I call it a kind of primal sap that rose, and I mean, you could see the men straighten up, in their chairs while I was speaking, and it wasn't a one-off. It happened all the time. And I thought, now that's interesting. When I talk about standing up, and we're talking like Old Testament justice here, Old Testament standing up the thing. We're not talking about today's definitions of injustice, just old-fashioned bread and butter. Someone's getting pounded. They need someone to come alongside them because they either can't or won't defend themselves, and they need someone to help them. And I noticed my audience just go, yeah. From there, that's really the genesis of the Protectors. And then, of course, you know what it is as a speaker, your star rises and then it fades and it fades and it fades. And I thought, okay, well, what am I going to do with people who are now following, right? But they like what I say, they like what I write. And I thought, well, where is justice missing? A lot of prayer, a lot of seeking wisdom higher than my own, settled upon adolescent bullying, because I was bullied when I was younger, mostly in the home. I got bullied at school a little bit, but I was kind of scrappy. I'd fight back pretty quickly, but not in the home. Settled upon adolescent bullying. I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. I thought, well, I didn't want to do what other people were doing. I wanted to bring it into a new area if I could. I didn't know if that were the case. And I thought, well, there has to be a faith-based response to adolescent bullying, right? Because it really does stem from profound spiritual issues, domination, control, feelings of superiority, disdain and contempt for other people, which is forbidden in the Hebrew Testament, and it's forbidden in the New Testament as well. And found that there really wasn't one. And so we created both a faith-based and a values-based anti-bullying program, largely based upon the power of the bystander. That's why we're called the protectors. Can we help that often conflicted bystander do something pro-social when they witness bullying take place? And what's really interesting is that when we first started out, we did more work in public schools than we did in private faith-based schools. Now it's gone a little more toward the faith-based side, but we work in both. We call them theaters. And largely, if we can get that bystander, 85% of which feel badly, it makes them angry, indignant that they witnessed bullying, but only something like 6, maybe 12% do anything pro-social. So how can we help them get over the fear of helping another person who's being bullied? And that's what we do. We grow courage in the soul, heart, mind, soul, or spirit of the bystander to stand up for that other kid. Because you mentioned it earlier, a bully's not looking for a fight. A bully wants to overwhelm. And so what they do is they look for the kind of person who will not, either can't or won't defend themselves. They just won't push back. And they profile, it's very much like criminals. Criminals don't just go after anyone. They don't break into the home that has 3 huge dogs, right? They'll just bypass that house and go on to a different one. Bullies are very similar. And that's why anti-bullying month in America needs to move from October to August, because by October, it's too late, Brad. Those bullies have profiled all month, and they're looking for that isolated kid, the new kid, the kid who's been told, for example, turn the other cheek, for example, when it comes to bullying. Brad, there is no more larger tortured scripture in the theater of bullying than turn the other cheek. When put in context, it has to do with having a generous spirit. It does not mean that a 4th grader should be pounded on the playground and put up with it and accept it. It has nothing to do with that. Our children were given to us for our protection. They're not to be the plaything for other people. And that's how bullies, at least serial bullies, view other people. It comes down to what the medievals called the synecopithecus. And the synecopithecus is the belief that other people are only valuable in as much as they can be bartered or sold for something. So a person who has that mindset, and by the way, Dante reserved the lowest level of hell, the 9th level of hell, for people with the synecopithecus, where people are not in fire, but they're in ice. It's a very interesting take on that view. So anyway, these are people, and we know them in our adult lives, right? Where these are people who will talk with you, they'll network with you as long as you have something for them. The second you don't have something for them, you don't matter. And that is how serial bullies view other people. They're a means to an end. It's also called the sin of the wolf, where other people are consumed. They're only important in as much as they can be consumed. So what does that mean for an adolescent in school? Studies show that when a serial bully, when they bully other people, they become much more popular. So bullies are actually popular up until around their sophomore year in high school, and the bystander kind of wakes up and they say they're no longer under the spell of that person. But look at the damage they do, Brad, in the meantime. We have this belief, we say that which doesn't kill us makes us stronger. We think we're quoting scripture, we're not. That's Friedrich Nietzsche, who hated scripture and also said that man is the cruelest of all beasts. It can make us stronger, but the majority of people who are the target of serial bullying, they have trouble with lasting adult relationships. These are the people who struggle with resentment in particular. It's the #1 emotion they struggle with. And it also, resentment tethers people to drug and alcohol abuse. They have a hard time controlling their emotions. So it really can harm that bystander, not just at that point in their life, but it can track them well into adulthood as well. So if we can get that bystander to stand up for the kid who either can't or won't stand up for themselves, fundamentally changing the theater of bullying, we're saving other people's lives. And then also too, for that bystander, what's really interesting, Brad, we have the sins of omission and commission, right? So we never really think what happens to the bystander if they do nothing. Studies show that when we have the power to help another person and we don't, our capacity for courage, sympathy, empathy, and related virtuous emotions and thoughts decrease. We literally become smaller souled. We have a word for that. Small souled is pusillanimous. We've shortened that word in our lexicon. And if I said it, it'll be the only word you remember me saying, but it rhymes with wussy. That's what it means. So we literally become smaller souled when we don't help other people when it's within our power to help them. Conversely, if we do help someone, our capacity for courage, sympathy, empathy, and self-confidence increases. We become larger souled. The word for that is magnanimous. So we become bigger, better people when we stand up to bullies. We become more confident in ourselves and we grow our capacity for courage. So it helps the bystander to be a protector. It helps that poor target, and it can even help the kid who's bullying. You know, Brad, we've witnessed more than 10,000 kids across the world publicly apologize for bullying. They'll do it. At the end of the presentation, at the very beginning of the presentation, I talk about how I've seen kids just like you apologize at the end of the presentation. We call an apology vitamin A. It's good for you and it's good for others. And by the end of the presentation, we've talked about what bullying is and what it's not. And would anyone want to apologize? And Brad, a kid will get up in front of all of their peers. They will walk from one end of an auditorium in front of it. I call it they're walking with a military bearing. No one is going to stop them from apologizing. And I saw one girl, her name was Grace, that she was bullying a boy. She got on her knee, put his hand in her hand, and she just genuinely apologized for what she was doing to that kid. So we're helping kids who bully as well.
Why would they do that? Why would they apologize and risk embarrassment? I mean, especially at that age where the peer pressure and being liked and followed and appreciated and virtue signaling and status is all they got. I mean, that seems to drive that age group more than anything else. I could see if there was a spiritual dimension, if what you and I as believers would say, the spirit is checked our spirit, or that there was a sense of regret or some spiritual element where God says, the Holy Spirit's like, you owe this person an apology and a humbling of yourself. It's a very Christian idea and it's not easy to do. But if you're really seeking God, we kind of enjoy it because not only do we feel like it pleases the Father, but it's like forgiveness. It heals you more than even the person. I'm sure you've heard this, but the lack of forgiveness is drinking a poison thinking it will kill your enemy. It doesn't. It kills you. Yeah. And so I'm just curious as to if there's not a spiritual dimension to it, what would psychologically or emotionally or whatever do you think would motivate a kid who must have some kind of status? If they've bullied and nobody stopped them, they probably are strong, probably, maybe not, but more than likely, they might be the athlete, they might be the cheerleader. They've got some strength and they don't owe anybody anything because nobody's going to stop them from being them yet. So I'm curious about.
Well, I've asked them, hey, why'd you apologize, right? And it's really interesting. You reminded me of the 8th grader. After the presentation, she saw her classmates apologizing to each other. She said, "Are you a priest or an actor?" And this is in a public school, right? And I said, I don't know, it might be a little of both, And so, by the way, in the public school, we don't bring religion in. But I think, the presentations there's a spirit to them. I think that for some, as Lincoln put it, I'm speaking to their higher angels. There's something in their conscience and their spirit. Their hearts are still, oh boy, I mean, even seniors in high school, their hearts are still pliable. They're still open to fundamental change. And one of the things that I say at the beginning of the presentation, today's a great day. If you've been bullying someone else, today is a great day. You're going to get a chance to change your roles. You're going to get a chance to do the right thing. Even when it's scary, you're going to get a chance to do the right thing. And I think another thing too is that it's just a safe place. It's really, for whatever reason, the presentation does have this kind of sanctuary feel to it. A buddy of mine is a public speaker as well. He does way better than I do, and financially, very, very well. And he says he facilitates when he speaks. And I said, that's cool. I preside. I see it as a priestly thing in public school, private school. We are ministering. We create an environment where it's actually cool to apologize. It's actually the cool thing. Now, the first one, Brad, is like an altar call, right? It often takes the longest. And then after that, it's like Woodstock. They're just loving each other. It's a love fest. And it's remarkable. I mean, we've had apologies go on for over an hour and a half. We've had schools change their schedule in order to help facilitate, what's happening. So, there's a lot of reasons. Then I'm reminded of one girl, cute little blonde girl. I think, boy, fourth grade, whatever. I noticed during apology time, she stood up and she seemed to be speaking to an entire roll of students, her classmates. So I'm speaking to the principal, and she comes up and she wants to shake my hand. She interrupts me, and she just said, "I want to thank you." And I shake her hand. You can tell she's a powerful young lady. You can tell. And I said, "Hey, I noticed you were, I don't know, did you apologize to an entire row?" And she said, "Yes, I did. I've been bullying my class for 2 years." And I said, "Well, why did you apologize?" And she said, "Well, you said today was a great day, and I never really thought of it that way." She felt like she was locked into the role of the class bully, and she took that opportunity to get out of that role.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we just had a safe place to do the right thing, afraid, and it ripples. It just continues. So
Well,
it's great.
I was literally going to just ask you, literally right before you said that story, so there must be something to it, is I wonder if perhaps if you start a bullying process, you kind of get stuck in this dynamic. And it's kind of like maybe some of them won out. There's
Yeah,
evil, bad people, even at young ages that are messed up. But I mean, to be a psychopath or a sociopath, that's pretty rare. I mean, that's the worst case scenario. But if it's just a regular person that just kind of was looking for some status or even just a sense to feel better about themselves by finding somebody less than them,
yeah,
but they're
it's fun.
stuck. Yeah, and they're kind of but they could get stuck in kind of like, now how do I get out of this thing?
Yeah,
Because it's like every time I look at this person, I'm almost committed to have to continue this book, because
yeah,
that's the dynamic we created. And you're like giving them permission to just sever this tie and move on, even if they don't become friends with them, or maybe they just ignore them
right.
from then on. I'm
Yep.
done with this. It's all
Yes.
been done. Everybody good now. I'm not bullying them. I'm
Yeah.
out. Leave,
Yeah.
and that's that. And you set them
We
free.
give
And
them a key. We give them a key to a prison cell that they didn't even know they locked themselves
yeah, yeah,
into. And Brad, that's a great point. In fact, I was talking about this yesterday. I work with kids who are being bullied. This is a time of year that we do individual counseling for kids being bullied because they're scared to death to go back to school, right, in the fall. One thing I was explaining to the father that I was speaking to, sometimes the best we can do with kids who bully, if you can't help another person, can you at least leave them alone? And sometimes that is the best we can do with someone who enjoys bullying. The fact is, I bullied a little bit elementary school, and I probably did a little more. I had a horrible bad mouth. I'm just embarrassed the thing is, I was good at sarcasm. Sarcasm is probably my spiritual gift. If I have a gift at sarcasm, and I'd be at parties, Brad, and I was like Dexter. I had a code, right? And so I would only pick on boys. I wouldn't pick on girls. And I'd be sitting there. I didn't grow up in the church, all that kind of stuff. So drinking and smoking, all that kind of stuff. I would zero in on a boy, and I wanted him to be sitting around girls. And I could just kind of tell I didn't want to fight, like I said earlier. I wanted to overwhelm someone. So I'd go after boys who were dim-witted, or at least more dim-witted than me. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to. There was a kid named Kevin once, and I really wanted to go after him because he was a target-rich environment. Because if I could take a shot at him and other people laugh, that would, I mean, I would score some points. But Kevin was really smart. And I remember sizing him up and going, too dangerous. So anyway, I could take someone who was happy, and within 4 words or less, I could knife them with sarcasm. And girls would laugh, and that made me feel wonderful. I got to tell you, Brad, it felt good. It felt good to do that to another person. I felt powerful.
Yeah.
But after a while, I was like, man, I'm good at this, and this is bad. I started waking up to that reality. I shouldn't be doing this, to other people. So, I talk about that during the presentation, and I say, there's no stones in my hands. I've said some horrible things to people on purpose, and it wasn't a one-off. I would go after them, 2, 3 times, even more if they wouldn't push back. So there's no judgment. It's a safe place for them to come clean. Their classmates applaud them. It's a beautiful thing to witness.
I don't know if I was bullied. I mean, I definitely had some bullies now and again in my life growing up. Can't say that I really was, afraid to go to school. Like some of these poor kids that really, it's miserable for them.
It is. They're throwing up before school.
Yeah. And just, and some of them kill themselves. Like, I can't do it. I'm out, so I know it's serious, and it matters that we try to find a solution here, or at least an awareness, so that maybe they can be protected, because they don't know how to reach out. Sometimes they're ashamed to bring it up. Like, they don't know what to do if their parents or their guardians are overwhelmed by it, because they don't know how to help them. They'll almost can facilitate it by saying, well, suck it up and just fight back. And they give them this because they don't know what to do. And the kid is basically floundering because they have no way to do this. And most people that are bullied can't fight. They're just, or they would say they'd stop it real quick. Those who can fight don't get bullied.
Yeah, that's
because
right.
they'll knock you out. And so it's like, he's not choosing. Obviously, you choose a victim.
Yeah.
And so but I do remember feeling a sense of, I don't even remember how now, because I'm not really, I just remember that I remember maybe in middle school, this one kid I decided to bully, and it was all verbal. I didn't ever hit anybody or whatever.
Yeah.
But I just kind of feel like there was something about the way I feel like I was treated at that time that was demeaning, or that was made me feel less connected to, or popular, whatever. I don't know what dynamic drove it, but I feel like I remember I chose to find somebody to bully, to make me feel better, because I felt like so bullied all the time, or so out of control, not being able to control and defend myself.
Yeah.
That I needed to go find somebody I could do it to, so at least I could release that onto somebody else. And I don't know how long it lasted, a month or two. I don't know. I don't think I really devastated him that much. Who knows? But I'm just saying, I remember choosing to do that to feel better about my own junk, my own hurt and my own pain. And of course, it makes you feel like you wish you hadn't chosen that route. But nevertheless, you said something earlier, though, that I'd like to circle back to, because I'd really like to kind of explore this, because when we think of bullying, I think we instantly think of high school or junior high school or elementary school. That's the bully. Kid making, knocking the books out of your hands, or whatever, pantsing you in the gym, or whatever the thing is that kids even do. I don't even know. It's probably worse.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we think of. It's kind of almost this little caricature of what bullying is. But we think of it at school, I think, usually, even though I know now with social media and whatever. And like you said, like we talked about earlier with progressivism and leftism, they're very much about bullying by claiming you're a bully. That's why I call it systemic narcissism, because it is. Whatever they call you is what they are. It's a very typical psychological truth that people tend to accuse people of things that they do or what they are. That's why when you see the left say you're a fascist, it's because they are. They're literally controlling the means of all the communication. That's fascism. You're a Nazi. It means you're controlled by some higher charismatic leader, which they are. They basically are the thing. They're projecting onto you so they don't have to endure and scrutinize their own dysfunction. And by the way, to bully is a lot easier than having a conversation or trying to reason or trying to even call somebody out. You think somebody's off base or that they got something you want to talk about. That can be an aggressive dialogue, but that means both people have access to the table of ideas, and then you can evaluate what you come up with. Bullies don't give you a chance. You don't even get to participate.
Do you remember the days, Brad, that, and it wasn't too long ago, that when we were younger, you could actually talk with another person about pretty heavy views, and you weren't going to be denounced within 5 seconds or less. There was a time that that was the case, and boy,
But you know what's interesting about this, though, Paul, and it might sort of bleed into, you know, your expertise again, mainly because it's mainly youth. Maybe you do it with adults too, but I'm guessing it's mainly, you know, the schools. But if you think about the idea of bullying people that disagree with you, that's a very childlike response to anxiety. It's a very childlike response to not being able to navigate interpersonal relationship. It just is. It's how kids do it. I'm going to hit you. I'm going to take your toy. I'm going to scream. I'm going to shout. I'm going to demand that you do what I say. It's childishness, and we've created an environment with this age group. I'm not sure which it is. I can't keep up if it's Gen Z or I don't know which one is which. But we have created this incredibly narcissistic, easy to say, but it's kind of true. But this very
say dogmatic.
but it's freezing their character from growing into maturity. It's
almost like when when they start doing hardcore drugs, right? They remain that level.
That's it.
Psychologically. Yeah. Well, I would say if they continue in that realm, you're right. If your response to an opposing view is to call people a name, and then if that doesn't work, say it louder.
Shout it down.
Yeah, shout it down. That makes sense that a person would stay at that level.
That's how a child behaves when they hear what
and then they raise kids who, through the umbilical cord of modeling, they see the most important person in their life expressing disdain and contempt for another person. You know, Brad, we roughly view other people one of three ways, and I promise I'm going somewhere with this.
No, be my guest.
If we perceive people to be above us psychologically or socially, rather, we can often express envy and jealousy, right? If we perceive people roughly equal to us, we can express anger. It's hot, but it dissipates. You can have your thing out, say your thing, whatever, and then, you know, go have a beer afterward type of thing. So those, we understand those, but this is where things really get bad. And I'm not justifying hot, heated anger. Hopefully people will understand what I'm saying here. For lack of save time, we can't keep going on a lot of this stuff. But then the last one is disdain and contempt. When we believe someone is below us, we often express disdain and contempt. And I'd mentioned it earlier, it's actually forbidden in the Hebrew Testament, and it's forbidden in the New Testament as well. And I think that, you know, the scripture, don't judge, let you be judged. I think that's probably better understood as don't express extreme condemnation of another person, yet it'll be your way. Because, you know, the word judge, there's a lot of, we're told throughout scripture to be a wise judge, to use wise judgment. So judge, you've got to be a little careful with that scripture, because people will use it to justify all kinds of things where you can't disagree with others. For example, even with a bully, you can't disagree with a bully. And that's not really what the Bible is telling us. We're not to condemn. And unfortunately, the rhetoric of what I would say is the extreme left. The extreme right has nasty rhetoric too, but it doesn't get legacy media probably carries the left's message more, I suppose. But in that condemnation, the fracturing that takes place within our culture, and and you brought it up, the fracturing that takes place within the psyche of the person who deploys that kind of rhetoric, it harms them as well, because we're all made in the image of God, and we are imbued with dignity, value, and worth. And that condemning spirit, I guess, if you want to use that term, really, really works against that dignity and that value and that worth. It causes great harm.
Well, and because the left controls the dissemination of ideas, they're really good at controlling language, and so they define the terms, they define the language. It can make us talk in circles sometimes because it's like, why did they not understand me? Well, because when you said God loves everybody, you meant this and I meant that, or I perceived it like this. And if you don't define your terms so that we make sure we're all kind of have have decided on particular principles that are immutable, then we can't really communicate because we're not speaking the same language, even if we're using the same nomenclature. And when you talk about this idea of judgment, I guess the reason I brought it up is because I think that one of the problems with that scripture is it's interpreted as in one can't assess.
Yeah.
And that's not true. You have to assess every day of your life. Is
Yep.
this a better food than that food? I'm going to judge which one is better. Is this school better than?
Foolish
Yeah.
people don't assess.
Yeah. Yes. And you
You know,
have to
as
make it, but sometimes it can be used. And again, I'm not trying to turn this into a left-right thing, but it is good to see the principles being put into place because you can see the destruction of them when they're done erroneously. For example, we would talk about policemen, and you would know all about this in Oregon, right? Defund the police and whatever. Profiling. And I once asked a policeman I was on a radio show, and I said, I'm just curious about this. If you're a police officer, you are in the worst case scenario because virtually every person you meet is in the worst moment of their life. They're about to be arrested. They just shot somebody. They just got shot. They just had somebody die. They just said a thing. They just ran the light. So this is bad. Their people are in bad situation at this point.
Yeah.
And so if you are on a beat and every person you meet that is 6'3" and weighs 200 pounds is shooting at you every time. When you see a 6'3" person that's about 200 pounds, you're assuming this is a bad guy.
Yeah.
You're doing that to protect yourself because you've learned that this type of person has historically, in my experience, has been something that I need to be leery of because they might harm me. Well, if that person happens to be a minority, right? If that is Black or Hispanic or Chinese or whatever it is, or trailer park white guy. And every time you've encountered people, for the most part, it's gone sideways. You're saying to yourself, yeah, I'm profiling. This has taught me that I better be extra careful because this is, or it could cost me my life. So my point is simply this. Sometimes you're wrong. Sometimes you're projecting that onto somebody who didn't do anything wrong. But my point is simply this. How does one survive in life if they're not trying to learn from history, learn from their from behaviors, learn from scenarios, and trying to utilize that in the future to protect and defend themselves? And that's a kind of its own subject matter, I guess. But what I wanted to bring up to you was this, because this would be an important idea I want to get from you, because you remember I'm guessing my comedy. It's pretty aggressive. It's in your face. It's unapologetic. Yeah, I'm going to probably insult or break taboos. That's part of what comedy can do well and can do with value sometimes if it has a purpose, if you're not trying to be mean, but you're trying to kind of expose a cultural issue in a way that needs to be held to scrutiny. That's maybe not allowed in public dialogue. Well, comedy sometimes has historically been able to get away with that, right? That's its purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to make fun of the king and not get your head cut off, right?
Mm.
So what I'm curious about is this. Bullying is bad, and because it does seem to oftentimes occur with the weakest and the most vulnerable, and somebody that you just, if you really saw it, it'd break your heart because it's this poor person that can't defend them. It's heartbreaking. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you this, though. Where, as a human, and if we even want to take it to the spiritual realm, as a Christ follower, a God follower, where do we need some of this friction, some of this never asked for bullying or attacks or demeaning or whatever to teach us how to overcome our response to that?
Yeah.
By becoming stronger. Now, I said to you earlier, if you go to that little kid that gets beaten up and you're the dad saying, just go beat him up. It's like, he can't. I don't know how to fight. I
Yeah. That's right.
can't. And then he gets ashamed because he doesn't know how to fight and he's getting beaten up, and he never could do that because not everybody can fight. Not everybody's smart. Not everybody's fast. Not everybody can do everything.
Or
you have
funny.
to navigate it a different way. You got to find a different path. So tell me, where is it bullying that is purely abusive? And where does someone need to learn how to navigate that to build their own strength and character so that in the future they kind of can overcome or at least endure it in a positive way?
Yeah, well, ideally they don't stay in the theater too long. Ideally, they have a game plan, and that's what we give these targets. We call it hardening the target, because the fact is, many targets don't even tell the bully to stop. They don't even say no. They, unfortunately, and I think our culture has played a bit of a part in this, they want to be like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz and just click your heels 3 times and it all goes away. Or they give some of the most unattainable answers. For example, Brad, you're a funny guy, and I'm okay with humor. And I was able to use humor to get out of some sticky situations. But, humor... And so parents will tell their kid, well, just crack a joke. Okay, do you know how hard it is to crack a joke well? I mean, you don't want to use too many words, and then it's the timing, and it's how you say it, and it's your facial expression. Some kids just can't do that. They'll probably never be able to do that for the rest of their lives. For some people, they're just not funny. So we give some very bad answers. The fact is, for many people, adolescent bullying is the first time that they will eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And they're often very confused by this. They think people are basically good, and that there must be a misunderstanding or miscommunication. This person couldn't be doing this to me deliberately. No, there's got to be another answer. So our culture has given us a very pop psychology approach to why people do awful things. So our culture hasn't given targets a very good understanding of why this person has gone after them. This person has gone after them because they can. This person has gone after them because it's fun, because in a perverted way, it's very fun. So you have this kid who is eaten from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. What do they do with that? To the best of their ability, they can learn how to transcend it. Because the fact is, when Jesus said the poor will be with us always, he may as well have added bullies as well. Bullies, roughly 12, 15% of a given population, which doesn't sound like a lot. That's like 1 out of every 8 people may have, we all have the ability to bully, but these people activate it for one reason or another. We may never know exactly why they do that. So ideally, what we're able to do, and I found this in the work that we did together with Godman, as well as later, is that people are genuinely so disoriented when someone intentionally abuses them. They literally don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But if we give them a game plan, studies show that if a person has a game plan ahead of time, they're far more likely to do the type of thing that can rescue themselves from the theater of bullying. And it's almost always verbal. It's in many cases also it's nonverbal. When I walk into a school, usually it's the beginning of the school year, and I see these kids, oh, it's horrible. They don't have the gift of objectivity of how their peers view them, that their shoulders are hunched over, they make darting eye contact, they don't stand up straight, they have a shortened gait when they walk. These are all kinds of things that bullies look for, because they show that person is fearful, and you can't blame them for being fearful. But what we do is we train them, we fake it till you become it. Hold your shoulders back, have eye contact, speak clearly. You don't yell, and you don't whisper. You make things declarative, and you move on. For example, one thing that targets will do, and their parents will tell them to do this too, is try to understand the bully. This is what you need to understand. They're out to get you. That's what you need to understand. And so they're not your friend. They might be in the future, but right now they are working against you. So to the best of your ability, denounce what they're doing. We love the word whatever because it's dismissive, but it's not an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. So it's dismissive, it's powerful, and then ideally say it and move through the theater of bullying, because oftentimes bullies do two things. They choose time and location. Time and location, very much predators do. And so it's to their advantage. To the best of your ability, move through the theater of bullying. Don't stop. That is a gift in elementary school, middle school, and high school, and that is a gift in the workplace. And in fact, I think this world tends to be harder on women than men. I've seen it. Women tend to have what I call a more accommodating spirit. Predatory, nefarious people will use that against them. No is one of the most important words we will ever say in our lives. No is one of the most spiritual words we will ever say in our lives. And the sooner all of our kids, but I think particularly our daughters, the sooner that they learn to say no with confidence and without justifying. Their no is true because they said it's true. You don't need it. You don't need an amen from another person. Your no is true because you said it is. Imagine the different choices those people are going to make as adults. You're far less likely, for example, to marry a narcissist. Narcissists are initially very charming, right? But they wear people out later on. But if you're taught to over yes and under no, you don't listen to that intuition that you have about other people. Anyway, it's a gift within a gift. If we can train our beloved daughters and sons to say no, to stand up to a bully, to have a viable game plan ahead of time. Real quickly, Brad, I remember after Godman, a military guy came up to me, and I asked him, what he did. He was in the military, and he was telling me about a time that he was in an ambush, and I believe it was Vietnam. Yes. So late at night, they're going through this like ravine, and there's these two machine guns, and they're just raining down hell on these men. And I said, well, what do you do? What did you do? And he said, well, you push through the ambush. And I'm like, push through the ambush? Not me. If that's me, I'm hiding behind a tree, a rock, a pregnant woman. I'm not pushing through no ambush. And he said, yeah, but you're going to die if you don't push through the ambush. And he told me that what they do is they train going through an ambush. All that to say, if you have a target, a kid who's being bullied, do some role play with them. Train them how to go through that ambush. And it might be a little tough at first, but I've done this many times with kids. You can literally see their confidence grow as like, oh my gosh, you mean I don't have to be a sitting duck for another person? I can implement a plan. Very important. It's going to help their lives now and until the day they die.
Well, and another thing that is tricky, and again, I don't know the lay of the land nowadays. I've been out of school for many, many years, but I'm just thinking about the way it used to be, right? Just as bad, just as horrible, right? If you're experiencing it, it sucks. If there's nothing good about it, or that you would choose it, but nevertheless, if you find yourself there, you would. But there was also this odd code of honor where you weren't allowed to tell on the bully, that if you went to the principal and said, hey, can you help me? Or the parent comes, the bully gets a win, that they've been chastised. Now you're really going to suffer next time I catch you alone. I'm going to beat you up. So you're almost like this fear of, I can't say anything because it's already bad enough. This will just exacerbate it. So when you told me some of those ideas about training a kid how to maybe do the whatever, I'm guessing you have kind of a template or a formula. Now, is this something that you guys do when you come into the school? Like it's done in this entire gathering, what do they call assembly? Is it all done right there within an hour, or is there some extensive training in this, a weekend class? You know what I'm saying? How is it literally just done as you show up and leave, and that's it?
Yeah, we do. Obviously, the student presentations are what people think is the most important presentation, and it's really important. So we give examples. I mean, you know what it's like as a speaker, right? You've got 45 minutes to affect change, And you can't talk about everything. I used to, and you would just lose your audience, right? They're just like, oh, this auditorium's hot, I'm passing out type of thing. So you got to be careful. You really have to package it well. So yeah, we give examples of good body language, weak body language to the, to the kids. But we do more of that parent night or community night. Brad, you'd be blown away. I don't, did you grow up in a home with two parents?
Kind of, but then they got divorced. So yeah, I had both, but yeah.
Yeah, so I was fortunate, I had two parents. And you know what a luxury that is today, Brad? When I speak to kids and I say, "Hey, you guys, I've only been able to the tip of the iceberg, right? I need to speak to your parents and related guardians." That is a whole nother world. When you and I got beat up at school, we came home, we had two parents kind of patch us back together, and then you go out for another day of difficulty. That isn't there's too many kids who just don't have that benefit,
Yeah.
that kind of safety net anymore. So what we do the student presentations, affect a lot of change, and then parent night, community night. That actually, Brad, is the most important presentation because parents, not teachers, are the frontline defense against bullying. We must change parenting if we're going to change bullying. There's only so much a teacher can do because a bully wants a public display of pain and anguish, but they don't want to get caught. So they're very, very clever as to how they do it. And so we train during parent night, community night. We can only do so much, and then we leave them with resources. And we talked about this earlier. This resource right here, Free Us from Bullying, goes over the entire theater of bullying. So we give them the materials that they need to help decrease the bullying. In fact, last night I didn't meet him. I saw him again, a young man here in Oregon that we helped with. He was being bullied pretty badly. We Zoomed with him and his parents more than once. And really glad to say this game plan that we gave him, this young man, I'm not going to say his name, fundamentally changed how he was perceived by his peers. So, speaking to the parents and related guardians right now, in most cases, most of the time, the bullying is going to get better, as in decrease. But it gets better much more quickly if you have a wise game plan. And that's what we need to give to our kids. We just can't send them into the theater of bullying with absolutely no plan when they witness bullying. In fact, or when they experience it. In fact, we say that's a form of child abuse. It's a form of child abuse to let your kid eat anything they want, for example. We have to have a viable plan ahead of time, and it's easier than people might think.
So when you said earlier from our spiritual dimension about, turning the other cheek, and you said, that's really been misconstrued and almost used to cause more pain than health and healing. Is there a way to kind of, I mean, I'm guessing just out of practicality, you're teaching them proactive ways to defend themselves. So you're basically saying, well, you have things you got to do because they're not going to just go away because you're so nice. Matter of fact,
Yeah,
they might use your niceness as weakness, and that
they
will
do.
be the end of you. So my thinking is what you're basically telling me, because I know you're a man of God and that you do care that how God's principles are put into place, is that what you're telling us, I think, is that to turn the other cheek doesn't necessarily mean to accept abuse, but it means there's a way to righteously defend yourself. So is there kind of a basic, in a few words, or a simple template of that? And again, I know it takes time to break this down because you do it through a whole gathering, but maybe tell somebody who's listening to this in the car or something, about that particular idea of turning the other cheek and how there's a godly, righteous, Christ-like way to defend yourself that isn't breaching that commandment.
Yeah, you reminded me of the great essay from C.S. Lewis, Why I'm Not a Pacifist, right? There's many people who they think that if you become a person of faith or, a Christian faith, that you become an honorary member of Peter, Paul, and Mary, right? That's all you do is sing Kumbaya and everything's wonderful, and there's no need for a strong response, things like that. That the nice Jesus that never really existed. When you look at the actual record, he was just he was a complex guy. He was tender when other people were tough, and then he was tough when other people were cowards. And he is a whole nother dimension. This guy's why he's so captivating for me, anyway. So yeah, so we've been given a false roadmap to life. Many of us, particularly I think within evangelical culture, in regard to self-defense. In fact, I remember after Godman, two police officers came up to me and they said that they have to be careful at church to say that they're police officers because, can you believe this? They'll catch grief at church for being a police officer. Unbelievable. You want to talk about naivete by people who just believe, I guess, in evil light. These are people who have never been bit by evil, the way at least I was bit by evil. When you've been really bit by evil, you don't become evil. I guess some people do, but then you realize, no, you've got to fight against it. And I would say in regard to bullying, well, let's go back to turn the other cheek. If you put it in context, he's saying, if you're going to be my disciple, the bar of behavior is not what the law allows you to do. You don't break the law. If you're going to be my disciple, I want you to go above that. And I want you to be known as being generous. It's what he says at the very end of that pivotal part of scripture. So, turn the other cheek is that you have the right to sue someone if they were to strike you on the cheek. And he's saying, no, don't automatically sue. He's saying, for example, if a person in authority asks you to porter 1 mile, you porter 2. Well, that's the Roman guards that would come, or the Roman officers, whatever they were, soldiers, that you were required to carry their stuff for 1 mile. And he said, no, if you're my disciple, you're going to go above the law. You're going to be known for your generous spirit. So that is what that means. And the third part, I believe it is, if a person asks for your shirt, give him your cloak also. And then with that one is you were not required by law to give your cloak. You might give a shirt, but you weren't required to give a cloak. So anyway, he just gave 3 common examples that his audience would know that was what the law required. So you need to go above the law if you're going to be known as my disciple. It does not mean that if you're a 4th grader on a playground, let yourself be pounded. And let's talk about this, where people talk about Christians suffering for their faith. The vast majority of kids who are being bullied on a playground, it has nothing to do with faith, nothing to do with their faith. Rather, it has to do with the shape of their ears. It has to do with that they have social anxiety. It has to do that they might have another physical ailment that makes them walk a little differently from other kids. It has nothing to do with suffering for Jesus. Absolutely, in the vast majority, none of that applies. And I would say, Brad, too, is that I think sometimes we say these things because we don't know what else to say. Yeah. We don't think there's another answer out there, but there is. And I would say that when it comes to pushing back, there's one major point, I guess, is that, as people of faith, we're not allowed to get into revenge. We're forbidden. We're not supposed to. This is why we love the word whatever, because it's dismissive, but it's not insulting to the other person. It shows power without revenge. So we need to be careful to fight off the desire to get back at another person, for example, but to sit there and allow yourself to get pounded on a regular basis. Well, do you remember Frank Peretti by chance?
Yeah.
In Free Us from Bullying, I interviewed him. He was 65 when I interviewed him. It wasn't 91 like me, Brad. He cried during the interview. He got angry because his parents wouldn't allow him. They said that if someone attacks you, you have to accept it. At 65 years of age, the paint in that house of horror hasn't dried. So sometimes it follows people into the rest of their lives. It really, really does harm them. It can make them stronger. We talked about that earlier, if handled with wisdom. And I would argue too, a compressed experience with bullying. If you get into like years of stuff, changes who you are. We used to think that our DNA was immutable, but around 2011, London University found that bullying can literally change the DNA of a kid, particularly a gene associated with mood regulation. So it can physically change us in who we are. So very important that we have an effective game plan while that kid's in the theater of bullying, get them out of there sooner than later. And yeah, it can make them stronger in the future.
There's a power in controlling how you respond, because I think what a bully really wants is to see fear or to see submission. They want to feel that they control you, that they have power over you, that they've diminished you. That's where they're feeding off of your fear and sucking it away from you and giving them a strength and a power. And you, of course, if you can facilitate that, they're sucking more energy from your soul, and they get power from that. It feeds them. And if you remove that fuel,
it's like
they're gonna move on.
You're a drug to them. And if they can no longer get a hit from you, a hit of their preferred drug. I mean, I've got to think there's dopamine involved in domination and control of other people. If they're not getting what they want, they often move on. You know, a serial bully, very narcissistic, and they tend to view people as either below them or a threat to them. In this, like in high school, might be popularity. They're getting attention that belongs to you. It's really interesting. A serial bully who almost all are narcissistic, they really believe that attention, adoration, all that sort of stuff belongs to them. Because they're special.
Yeah, I heard that from Jordan Peterson, actually, talking about sometimes we used to think bullies were just so felt bad about themselves, so this was a way to try to help lift them up. And it's the opposite. They think they're great. I'm so much better than you that I can diminish you and that, sap away your dignity for myself and leave a carcass and have no qualms about it. Well, that's a pretty screwed up person, but you think you deserve it and that you are worthy of that. It's a broken person. And I'm sure that you've seen some beautiful repentance of some of these bullies who something broke them down. They go, I don't want to be that guy. And I'm sure there's also kids in that crowd that are bullies that aren't saying sorry, and they ain't going nowhere. And it's like, you can take your little convention and shove it, because I like this part of me.
So Brad, before I appear to school sometimes, the serial bullies, the unrepentant, they know I am a threat to their power base. They undercut me before I get there. They'll say things like, and imagine this, they'll say things like, why is the school wasting money on this? Now, when has that kid ever cared about the budget of the school? Now it's being
suddenly they're concerned about fiscal responsibility.
Can you believe it? It's apparently a miracle that this kid is this way, and they'll undercut me. They'll get their little or what they'll do. Another thing they do a lot of things, Brad. We don't have enough time to go into all the things they do, but sometimes they'll skip out just before the event, and they're very clever. They'll bring like 4 or 5 people with them to skip the event itself. So they ain't no dummies. I am a threat. I am a threat to them, and they know it. Sometimes I'll call them out during the presentation too, because what they'll do is I don't always do it. It just depends on the energy. You know energy in rooms as well, better than I do. You can tell they're undercutting me, but they're just saying things just loud enough to get the people around them to not pay attention. Every once in a while, I'll just say, hey, you guys, you need to stop. You need to stop that. They usually do. But anyway, they try a lot of things to make sure that their power base is not broken. In fact, before I've gone to a few schools, and just before we got there, the kids left the school. The parents are like, well, we know the gig's up. We're going to the public school now or whatever. Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, as we kind of wrap this up, and it's been a great interview. It's been good just to kind of reconnect with you because
Yeah, it's good
obviously,
catching up.
but I'm glad that that you are doing this thing because it is important and it's crucial, and I'm glad that it's coming from a man of God because you're going to bring a spiritual dimension, even if it's in the public sphere, and so you're not blatant about it. But the truth is, all truth is God's truth. So
That's right.
if the principles you're giving them is healing and helpful, it's because it's God breathed. It's a principle of God's that simply are true. And you can be wise enough to utilize these principles in a way that feels secular. People can tell, like the one girl that said, "Are you a priest or an actor?" You can't not see the spiritual dimension of this because it is a
Yeah.
spirit of kindness, a spirit of courage, a spirit. There's
Mhm.
something that we all know we have as humans because we're made in God's image that people have and don't have. And there's a dark spirit and there's a light one. And the dark works. It works. It just doesn't sustain itself, and it always comes with a price. But the light might be more sacrificial, but there's healing and there's beauty on the other side of it that is long lasting, and it's something we all desire. I have subscribers that are part of the militia of the mind. These are people who want to participate as Christians online internationally. And you can also join the mighty 10,000, which are basically 10,000 people who identify as Christ followers who want to be disciples. And so it's $3 a month, but it allows them to receive some of my comedy online for free. And one of the things that they can get is they get one question for my guests that only they get to see, just to give them a little incentive for participating. So I did want to ask you this question, and it will be for my subscribers only of the mighty 10,000. But I think it's interesting, and I was curious about it. You said that your bullying that happened to you didn't so much happen in the public arena. It happened at home. You also
Yeah.
said just a little bit ago that your home was a two-parent family that was a kind of a sanctuary and a place where you felt like there was a great place to get some healing. And yet you said
Mhm.
that's where the bullying is. So that's very interesting to me. So can you tell me, so where did this bullying happen? And maybe it's your siblings or whatever. We'll find out
Yeah.
at home that caused you more distress than even in the public sphere. Hey guys, I'm interrupting my own interview. If you want the answer that you haven't heard yet, go to bradstine.com and join one of the 3 tiers. It is the militia of the mind, it is the warrior level, or it is the special forces. And then you'll get all kinds of special content and bonus answers to make you smarter than you could ever imagine. Go there now, jump on and join the mighty 10,000. Being a parent's hard. Being a kid at school's hard. I really
Yeah.
appreciate, what you're doing, though. Do me a favor, hold up that book. I want people to see this book because this is something guys can get on Amazon in case you aren't at a school. Free Us from Bullying, Paul Coughlin, Real Solutions Beyond Being Nice. I love that.
Mhm.
Jesus was, I don't know that nice was anything we are ever asked to be.
Yeah.
I think that he talked about characteristics of people. Blessed are the meek and the humble and whatnot.
Yeah.
But, how they engage people, he didn't really go into that. He just talked about having a meek spirit doesn't mean that you can't be aggressive.
Yeah.
Heck, the Bible even says, be angry, sin
Mhm.
not. How do you do
Yeah.
that? Righteous indignation. There's a righteous way to say, this is bad, this is evil, and this needs a much more aggressive approach than this sweet niceness, because in this case, something is at stake and it needs to be addressed immediately. And that's the $100,000 question, right? As to being able to discern those two ideas. So, how do they get to bring in a protectors gathering at their school or organization?
Yeah, yeah. So they can just contact us or me, Paul at theprotectors.org. We work with dozens of schools per year. And, Brad, the kind of the sad thing is some of these schools, smaller schools, they really need help. Spoke with one yesterday, but they don't have a budget. So we're looking for people who will just sponsor a school, and we come in, share in the good work that we're doing. Literally, we know we can change lives when we go in, and we often save lives as well. So people can be part of that. If this is, bullying is a pain point. unlike any other for many people, right? So it's like they may not sponsor something, but this is something like, oh my gosh, yeah, I need to do this because they were probably bullied or they had a sibling, right, who was bullied. So it's an opportunity to burn out the bad soil and sponsoring a school, because it's really sad to be able to say, sorry, when we got it, we have to keep the doors open here. And theprotectors.org. Check out the videos. We've helped more than 10,000 kids apologize across the country and across the world, and we could bring that to your community.
I love that. And .org, I'm presuming it's a nonprofit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that means that when they donate, they get a tax deduction. So why not take advantage of that as well? If you care about this, if you listen to this, if you're watching this and you feel like, man, that is something happened to me. I made it, but I sure wish this would have existed when I was there. How can I help the next generation? Go to protectors.org and donate and give to something that matters. If you're a Christ follower, what can be more important than actually being the Good Samaritan instead of reading about it? And this is a way to do that by helping the broken on the side of the road get healed. And this is what Paul Coughlin does. I'm glad that he's still doing this hard work and God is using him. It's so important. Glad that he's my friend and that we're able to reconnect in a way that I hope heals other people. Folks, when you watch Brad Stine Has Issues, you have to understand that I don't care about bringing people on that think like me or act like me. I care about truth. Truth is God's, and I don't care who delivers it. If it's true, it's of value, and he is good delivering the truth that's necessary. Man, nowadays, and we didn't have time to get in this, maybe we'll have to have another interview. The one thing about bullying, that at least in the old days, you could leave school and rest for a minute. Not now. It's in your hand in a cell phone. It's in your hand on a tablet. It's in your hand on computers. It's in your hand on Instagram, that they follow these poor kids home and bully them even in the sanctuary of their own room. So this is a big deal and it matters. So pray about it, think about it in a way to help this organization grow and build more opportunities for more speakers to go throughout this nation and around the world if necessary, to help kids who desperately need help, and heck, even adults, might find some solace in this as well. Folks, remember, if they ever say you're being politically incorrect, always say thank you for the compliment. There is nothing more important than fighting against darkness, cultural Marxism, that is demonic, it is godless, and it's trying to fill a void that only God can fill. So, folks, stand for truth. If you're a Christ follower, you're the last truth teller left on earth. The demons have been unleashed. If you have any sense of discernment, look around. This is a turning point in the earth as to what's going on. Be a fighter. Be a warrior. Stand up for truth, and continue to support guys like this. And remember, I'm just a comic, but hey, I'm doing what I can, the best I can, and I'm doing what God has told me to do. Just put the woke back to sleep. See you next Monday.